The first thing you notice when you approach the ruins of Mercy Hill Hospital is the silence. Not the peaceful kind, but a thick, heavy silence that seems to press against your skin. Located just outside of Denton, Ohio, the hospital was closed in 1989, following a string of malpractice lawsuits and rumors of unethical experiments. For decades, it's been a magnet for ghost hunters and urban explorers, but few stay longer than a few minutes inside. In the summer of 2017, Jeremy, a 28-year-old photographer with a taste for the macabre, set out to document America's most haunted, abandoned buildings. Mercy Hill was number 3 on his list. He planned to spend a single night there, armed with his camera, flashlight, and a digital recorder. He never finished the project. Jeremy arrived at Mercy Hill around 7:30 p.m. with enough daylight to scout the building before the real exploration began. The hospital was a monolith of gray concrete, its windows shattered like jagged teeth. Ivy and rust had claimed nearly every surface. The front entrance had long since been chained shut, but a side door near the ambulance bay hung loosely off its hinges. Inside, the air was stale and dry, smelling faintly of old chemicals and mold. Paint peeled from the walls like skin. And every step Jeremy took echoed far louder than it should have. He documented each hallway meticulously, snapping photos of overturned gurneys, crumbling walls, and faded warning signs. He didn't feel afraid. Not yet. That changed when he reached the 3rd floor, the psychiatric wing. According to the old hospital floor plan, the 3rd floor had once served as an intensive care unit for mental health patients, many of whom were violent or deeply disturbed. Jeremy had read rumors online of unethical treatments conducted here, isolation chambers, electroshock therapy, even experimental drug trials that were quietly buried by the hospital administration. The hallways on this floor were narrower, the doors heavier, and at the very end of the hallway was room 313, the one room still completely intact. No graffiti, no broken glass, no signs of age. It was as if the room had been waiting. Jeremy approached it cautiously, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. He peeked through the window in the door. Nothing. Just an old hospital bed and a rusted metal table. He pushed the door open, surprised it wasn't locked. The temperature dropped as he stepped inside. It was subtle at first, a chill that crawled up his arms. He raised his camera to take a photo of the bed, but the camera wouldn't focus. The lens stuttered, clicked, and then turned off entirely. Jeremy frowned and checked the battery. Full charge. Then he heard it. A low, rhythmic thumping. Not from the room, but from the hallway. Footsteps, heavy, slow, deliberate. He quickly stepped back into the hallway and aimed his flashlight toward the sound. The beam flickered, then steadied, revealing an empty corridor. But the footsteps continued. They were getting closer. Jeremy backed away slowly, heart pounding. He whispered to himself that it was just old pipes, maybe water shifting through the rusted system. That was until he saw the figure at the far end of the hall. It stood motionless, a man in a faded hospital gown, barefoot, head tilted slightly to the side. The man took a step forward. Jeremy didn't wait to see more. He turned and ran, stumbling down the stairwell, nearly dropping his flashlight in the process. He didn't stop until he reached the second floor. Panting, he glanced back. No one followed. Still shaken, Jeremy decided to wrap up his visit. He returned to the first floor to grab a final shot of the lobby. But something felt off. His recorder, which he'd left running in his backpack, was still on. Later, after making it back to his car, he played it back. The first half was normal. His footsteps, ambient creaks, and his voice narrating certain scenes. Then came a section recorded while he was in room 313. There was a whisper, barely audible at first, but with headphones, it became clear. "Why did you leave me?" It was a child's voice. Terrified, Jeremy uploaded part of the footage and audio to his website. He posted a warning telling others never to go to room 313. He said he felt something followed him home. Shadows in his apartment moved when nothing was there. Whispers came from the vents. And every night at 3:13 a.m., he'd wake up gasping for air. 2 weeks later, Jeremy stopped posting. His account was deleted. Emails went unanswered. Months later, his landlord found his apartment abandoned. Everything in place. Keys on the counter. No signs of struggle. On the wall above his bed, scrawled in shaky handwriting, were the words, "I'm still here." No trace of Jeremy Lawton was ever found. To this day, Mercy Hill Hospital remains off-limits to the public. But every once in a while, curious explorers try to find room 313. Some return, some don't, but they all report the same thing. A cold spot in the hallway, a door that opens by itself, and the sound of slow, barefoot footsteps that never seem to stop. For decades, Blackridge Asylum stood like a scar on the outskirts of Fairmont, Pennsylvania, decaying monument to everything the town wanted to forget. Opened in 1912 as a psychiatric hospital, Blackridge promised care and safety to the mentally ill. But by 1954, the institution was quietly shuttered, following allegations of neglect, unethical treatments, and a wave of disappearances among both staff and patients. No official statement was ever released, no investigation completed. The building was simply abandoned, padlocked, and left to rot. But one part of the asylum's legend never disappeared, room B13. Whispered about by nurses and patients alike as the screaming room, a small, windowless chamber deep within the basement ward. It was rumored to be a place of punishment where patients were locked for days without light, food, or sound. Some said the screams coming from that room weren't just from patients, but from something else entirely. Most dismissed it as myth. That is, until the tape surfaced. In 2009, 3 college students, Lena Marshall, Dion Grant, and Mark Tell, set out to create a short documentary for their film class called Voices of the Forgotten. Inside Blackridge Asylum, the plan was simple. Spend one night inside the asylum, document its history, explore the more infamous wings, and include interviews with locals who remembered the hospital before it closed. They brought with them standard gear, handheld cameras, flashlights, a digital voice recorder, and backup batteries. The building had long been declared unsafe, but Lena had found an unlocked window in the east wing. They entered at 6:43 p.m., filming from the moment they stepped inside. The asylum was in ruin. The floors were warped from decades of water damage, walls buckled with mold, and graffiti covered nearly every surface. But what struck the students most was the silence. No wind, no wildlife, just the creaking of the old building under its own weight. They explored the upper levels for the first 2 hours. Most rooms were empty. Old hospital beds, rusted restraints, broken medicine cabinets. The camera caught the occasional flicker or sound anomaly, but nothing that screamed paranormal, until they reached the basement. The stairwell was partially collapsed, but passable. The air grew heavier the further they descended, thicker, colder. Their breath turned visible despite the summer heat outside. The basement was a maze of low ceilings and narrow corridors. The group moved slowly, Lena filming while Mark read from a map they'd found online. Around 10:15 p.m., they found the door labeled B13, faded paint, dented steel. The small viewing window was covered from the inside with what looked like dried paper or fabric. Lena wanted to film outside the door, maybe narrate a section there and then move on. But Dion insisted on opening it. "We didn't come all this way just to stare at a door," he joked. The door groaned open. Inside was a small, windowless room, bare concrete. Old rusted chains bolted to the walls, and something that looked like a speaker or vent in the far corner. But there was no furniture, no lights, and oddly, no dust. It was cleaner than any other room they'd seen. As they entered, the door slammed shut behind them. They screamed, spun around, and tried to open it, but it was locked from the outside. Mark kicked at it, but it wouldn't budge. That's when the lights failed. All 3 flashlights went out at once. Panic set in. They shouted, tried phones, but got no signal. Only the camera's night vision still worked. Lena, who had been filming, kept recording instinctively. On the footage recovered later, the first oddity appears 13 seconds after the lights go out. A low humming sound, faint but rhythmic, like a deep, throaty breath repeating in a slow loop. Then a voice. It came from the vent. A child's voice, whispering, "Turn around." They froze. The voice repeated louder this time. "Turn around." Mark swore it came from behind Lena. She spun, camera in hand, and caught it. A shadow in the corner. Not a trick of the light. A solid figure, small, unmoving. Then it screamed. The sound was beyond human, high-pitched, metallic, endless.
Ow.
The walls vibrated. Their ears bled. The camera dropped to the floor, pointed sideways. It kept recording. The screaming lasted 17 full seconds. When it stopped, so did everything. The lights returned. The door was open. But Mark was gone. There was no sound of footsteps. No scream. No scuffle. Just gone. Lena and Dion, both disoriented and shaken, ran. They didn't look back. They exited through the same window they entered, drove to the police station, and handed over the footage. An official search was launched the next day. The police found the camera, found their gear, found blood smears along the hallway leading to room B13. But they never found Mark. Lena and Dion were investigated, but no charges were filed. The footage backed up their story, at least partially. Still, both withdrew from school, refused interviews, and vanished from the public eye. Months later, a local paranormal team snuck into Blackridge with new equipment. They found room B13 still open. Inside was only one thing: an old patient file. Mark's name was written on the cover, but the file was dated August 3rd, 1953. Mark Tells was born in 1989. To this day, room B13 remains locked, not by chains, but by silence. The property is patrolled, the building scheduled for demolition. Yet every year, on the anniversary of the documentary crew's visit, a distant scream is reported echoing through the woods that surround the asylum. Some say it's the wind. Others say it's something that never left. Something that lives in room B13. Something that still waits for someone to open the door. St. Amelie's Hospital had been abandoned for over 20 years. When demolition crews finally arrived in the winter of 2020, located in a forgotten corner of upstate New York, the hospital had long been a source of local superstition. Built in 1923 and closed in 1997. It served as a general hospital with an attached psychiatric wing and a morgue that extended into a sprawling underground complex. The building had seen everything: polio outbreaks, war injuries, and later, institutionalized patients who were hidden from the public eye. Over the years, rumors swirled of illegal testing, patient abuse, and strange rituals in the lowest levels. But none of it was ever proven. After years of decay, the town received federal aid to tear the structure down and clear the land. Most of the cleanup crew wanted nothing to do with the place. Locals called it Amelia's mouth, a place that consumed people. And they weren't wrong. Elias Wright was one of the few who stayed. A 39-year-old contract worker, Elias wasn't new to creepy buildings or long shifts in dead silence. He had worked on prisons, warehouses, even old train stations. He didn't believe in ghosts, but he did believe in finishing the job. His assignment was to assess the integrity of the sub-basement floor, which included the morgue, the incinerator room, and an auxiliary storage area that hadn't been opened in over 3 decades. Armed with a flashlight, dust mask, and portable radio, he descended the rusted metal stairs beneath the main building. The deeper he went, the colder it got. The air changed from stale to metallic, almost like blood. He told himself it was rust, old pipes, the wet concrete. Still, the silence felt unnatural, like a vacuum. When he tried to call in on the radio, all he got was static. At the end of the corridor, he found a room not listed on any blueprint. Its door bolted shut with reinforced steel. The plaque was faded, but beneath the dust, he could barely make out H1 cold storage. Elias, ever the curious type, forced the door open using a pry bar. Inside was darkness, thick and absolute. His flashlight flickered. He tapped it. The beam steadied. The room was large, walls lined with empty gurneys, old freezers, and thick medical tiles, stained black from age. But what caught his attention was a set of footprints leading across the dusty floor. Barefoot, small, and recent. He followed them. The footprints led to a corner where a freezer unit had been ripped from the wall, revealing a passage behind it. A crude tunnel dug into the earth. Elias should have turned back, but something made him crawl in. The tunnel stretched for about 30 feet, then opened into a circular room, clearly man-made. Smooth walls, no markings. In the center, a drain, no furniture. Just the drain and the cold floor. Elias stepped inside, calling out. His voice echoed oddly, not outward, but inward. It felt like the sound got swallowed. Then, the lights went out. He dropped to his knees, fumbling for his flashlight. When it lit again, he wasn't alone. There was someone standing in the far corner. A small girl, maybe 10 years old. No shoes, hospital gown soaked at the bottom, head bowed. He whispered, "Are you all right?" She raised her head. Her eyes were black, not empty, but reflecting a depth that wasn't human. She didn't move, but behind her, something did. Shapes in the darkness. Too tall, too thin. Hands dragging on the floor. The girl smiled. Then she screamed. It wasn't just a sound. It was a pressure. Elias dropped the flashlight and covered his ears, blood dripping from his nose. The walls shook. Dust rained from the ceiling. He ran, scrambled through the tunnel, tripping and cutting himself, emerging back into H1 covered in dirt and fear. He bolted up the stairs into daylight, gasping, shaking. The demolition supervisor found him pacing outside, incoherent. He quit the next day, refusing to explain what he'd seen. But he left behind his flashlight and the footage. Unbeknownst to him, the flashlight had a built-in body cam. When reviewed by a security consultant weeks later, the footage showed something deeply disturbing. In the last 30 seconds, the camera picked up multiple whispers, voices overlapping in different tones and languages. And in a single, clear frame, the reflection of Elias in the flashlight's lens showed someone standing directly behind him. But no one else was there. Despite this, demolition resumed. But the crew that returned to clear the sub-basement refused to enter H1. On the final day of demolition, a worker named Barry Smith went missing. They found his helmet and boots outside the tunnel in H1. And his last recorded message over the radio was a whisper. She said, "The floor remembers us." The site of St. Amelie's is now a grass lot. No markers, no signs. But locals say, on cold mornings, when the fog rolls in, you can hear voices under your feet, soft, low, calling out. And if you stand too long on the wrong patch of ground, the temperature, the kind of cold that feels like it's rising up from the floor beneath you, waiting.